everybody. Happy Sunday. Just getting my other computer set up. How is everybody this evening? I think I got it. Oh, I got a couple people in here already. All right, just a second. I'm going to turn off the little banner. How is everybody this evening? Got to find the comments just a second. Make sure you say something that you can hear me okay, all right? So hopefully everybody's hearing me all right. Hi, Margaret. Dad isn't sitting in here with me. He's watching the show. They're asking about you. Hi, Dad. So how is everybody this evening? Hi, Teresa. I'm seeing who everybody is. Oh, hi, Kathy. Everybody's hearing me okay? I'm using the microphone on my computer right now, and I'll switch over to the other one. I can see, see and hear me. Okay, cool. So I've been sewing today. I've been working on the video for one of the bench buddies for December. So we are going to do the bench buddies, in December. The November ones I already gave to you as videos. And the first 2 weeks in December, we're going to make these two little guys. So this is the bench, but this is the first one we'll do, the little Christmas tree. So I already had this one done, but I had to make a video for the second one. So here's the little Christmas tree one. This will be the first Sunday. Is that the 5th? The 5th, I think. So this will be the first Sunday. We'll do this one. And then the second Sunday, we'll do the little square one. So this one, I had to make a video for the piecing because you have to piece this little top. So it's all those little hourglass blocks. So I thought that would be easier if I did a video. So we'll in the live class, we'll do this part and then we'll put the rest of it together. But I did a video for the piecing part. So I was working on that today, made a video. Aren't they cute? I just thought they were cute. So this is the first one, and then we'll do the square one. This will be the last one we do for the year. And then everybody decided they'd like to do some more. So we're going to do, starting in January. Okay, so we're going to do, one of the gals suggested that we do them a month ahead so that we can do like the January ones in December and the February ones in January. So you have them, for the whole month. So this is the first January one. So I already made this, so I knew what I was going to do. And I'm going to make videos for the 2 January ones, and I'll upload them the Sunday after Christmas and the Sunday after New Year's. So you have a couple of classes during my little break. I'm going to take a break between Christmas and New Year's for about 4 weeks. But I'll have these videos ready for you. So you can be working on your January bench buddies. And then in January, we'll make the February ones. So I thought that would work out. I thought the little snowman was awful cute. So he's all put together, and I just need to make the video now. I had to make one to make sure I remembered how I did this. You like the fringe? Yeah, I do too. They did this one with like a hanger so that it would hang, but I kind of like the fringe on the 2 ends. So I just put the fringe on. So yeah, so that's what I did the other night. I made that little pillow. It doesn't take, that one's a fast one, so it's a really fun one to do. Has some glitter vinyl. Can you see the white glitter vinyl on it? So anyway, that's what we're going to be doing. And then in the end of January, we'll make the 2 February pillows, and we'll have a software class. So I've got that all planned already. So I'll be getting them up on the groups pretty soon, so you know what exactly when we're doing everything and stuff. So, but these will be 2 pre-recorded videos, the 2 January pillows. So you'll have something to do during the little break, and between Christmas and New Year's, kind of. It's I'm going to take between the 2 weeks before Christmas and the 2 weeks after Christmas off. So, but I'll make you some videos. Okay, so let me get these out of the way here. Giving everybody a chance to get in here. Hello, everybody saying hi. Well, hi, Cindy. Okay, so we got the little pillows shown. And so tonight we're going to work on piecing May Your Days Be Merry and Bright. And so I loved this is my fourth quilt. I've made 4 of these now. And this is a very simple quilt pattern to piece. So what I did is I pre-sewed a little bit so that you could see the I could get the last row put on, and then I might put on one of the borders. I don't think I'll get all the borders done tonight, but you've got the videos for the borders. So that are very detailed. So I did one video for the piecing of the center and one video for the, when you buy the designs, one video for the border attachment. Okay. So I might try to do one border tonight. Let's see how we go. Okay. All right. So with no further ado, let me get my camera switched over here. Give me a second. And we'll go over to the other camera and the other microphone. Okay, so hopefully everybody's still hearing me okay. Is everybody still hearing me all right? Can you see my machine now? So I tried to make this a very simple pattern because the pattern, I didn't want it to be hard because I know a lot of you are not really quilters, but I made this real simple so that you could learn a little bit about piecing or maybe making a quilt. And I just thought it looked kind of cute and random, and it was, I just love red work. So that's how I kind of came upon this. I saw this little like layout on a quilt somewhere, and it was a little different than this, but I just really liked this one, and it was simple, and I could get it done really quick, and you can get it done really quick. So, all right, so I have actually pieced some of my rows. So the piece of paper on page 3 of the instructions, it says piecing the interior of the quilt. And this is sort of your roadmap. So each row, so what I did is you piece each row, it's a vertical row. Okay, so there's 5 rows. And if you see here, I have all of the blocks labeled. So what I ended up doing, I just kind of figured this out as I was going. Give me a second here to get my piles of blocks. So what I did is I just found an order that I liked for my 6 squares of fabric. So let me just pull this back so you can see my fabrics laying here. And I just kind of figured out what I liked for an order, and I marked them A through F. And the trick with this is to piece these always in the same order, because then when you go to put the quilt together, they appear random. So you're not going to get like 2 of the same blocks together by accident. So if you just go, every time you have a 6 patch, so there's a 6 patch here. Point this down a little bit. A 6 patch, go A, B, C, D, E, F. And then for the 4 patches, again, you're still going to start with A, B, C, D. Okay, but then you're not going to do E and F. And then down here, I did A and B. Okay, because there was like this row is sort of like a drop block. So it's like a half block. Okay. The last row, as you can see, I started out with E and F because I had A, B here. So I didn't want A, B again. So I started out with E and F for my blocks. And then I went back to the A, B, C, D for the 4th patch, and then the A through F for the 6 patches. So, but when you go to put it together, then it appears random, even though the blocks are always in the same order. So that's what I figured out, that it would be that way. I'd never have two of the same block together by accident, because I would certainly do that. And sometimes you can just drive yourself crazy trying to get it to look random. And sometimes if you keep organized about it, it appears random. So anyway, so we're going to do the first row. I have pieced my row 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'll show you my pieced top in here in a minute. But let's do the first row. So you can see the first row, row 1 here, has 1, 2, 3. It has 3 of the red work blocks in it. Okay. Now the only thing, hi Jan. The only thing I did. I didn't really put these red brick designs in any particular order, with the exception of I wanted May Your Days Be Merry and Bright in the center, just because that was like the feature block. And that's why I named it this, because I found that block first. So I wanted that one in the center. So I put that one in the center row, row 3, right in the center. And then the other thing is I didn't want my gingerbread people to be like right next to each other. So I kind of put like, one in the first row and one in the last row, just so they weren't like right next to each other. Okay. So otherwise it doesn't matter. You can mix and match, you can do them. And I think all 4 of my quilts are in a different order. So I've done this 4 times. This is the 4th quilt. So I think they're all in a different order. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out in row 1. We're going to piece this. And row 1, what I like to do when I start these is I like to piece the squares. Oh, might have to have a warm computer. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a little cool, isn't it? So it feels cold tonight, and then it snowed last night. I went out to get something. I went out to get gas, and I walked out and there was snow on the steps. So all right, so what I like to do first when I start doing this is I like to sew my units, like the 6 patches and the 4 patches together first for each row. So the first row, I need to sew a 6 patch and a 4 patch and a 2 patch. So I'm going to start out by doing that. Let's get our blocks. So I need my A and my B. I'm just going to throw them all on the floor here. Okay, so I need 2 A's and 2 B's. I'm just going to lay them all out here in order. So here's my 2 A's and my if I can get the second one here, my 2 A's and my 2 B's. So we'll set these here. Okay, and then I need 2 C's and 2 D's, because I have a 6 patch and a 4 patch. So here's my 2 C's and my 2 D's. So I usually just do, this is how I do each row. I just get it all lined up. And then I have another A, B block at the bottom, because the bottom one was this is one of those half drop ones. So I need another A and another B. Okay. And then I need 1 E and 1 F, because I've got 1 6 patch. So here's my E and here's my F. So we'll do 1 E and 1 F. Okay. I'm about out of blocks. Yeah, my fabric, I like the fabric. I got this fabric at a little quilt shop called Helios Stitches and Stuff in Mount Vernon, Iowa. And I just went in there and they had all these in there, and I just picked 6 that were cute, and that's what I went with. So, okay. So I've got my blocks laid here that I need for my little units. I'm just going to lay them up here inside my machine, so I can have my paper here. Okay. So the first unit we're going to make is a 6 patch. So I'm going to grab my A and my B. Okay. And I'm going to put those right sides together. And this is how I did each row. I just picked out what I needed for each one. Some of the rows, like the next row, has 2 6 patches and a 4 patch. So, it's different. And then I'm going to use the Q02 piecing stitch on my machine. And I have my J foot on. No, I didn't get this at Walmart. No, they didn't have a lot of fabric. I did get some Christmas fabric, really cute Christmas fabric, after I'd already picked this out, though, Cindy. That would have been cute for one of these quilts at Walmart. I got a whole bunch of really cute fabric, but I had already gotten this, so I used this. So that's true. I could have gotten it from there. So we're going to use cotton. I've got cotton thread in the machine. So I've got my Pima cotton thread in the machine. And I've got my number 11 needle in. And I have got the Q02 piecing stitch on with my J foot. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and let's just piece these together. So I like to piece them. So like this is going to be my first 6 patch. So I'm going to piece this together first. So let's do the 2 patches first. So we need to do the A and the B together. So I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam. Okay. And then I need my C and my D together. So here's C and here's D. Okay, so we're going to going to lose my C. There we go. We're going to put C and D together. And this keeps me organized so that I don't have so many squares laying around. So I just kind of do one patch, you know, one unit at a time. So here's C and D. And then here's E and F, because the first one's a 6 patch. So here's E and F. And I'm going to put those together. And do my 1/4 inch seam. Okay. Get a little bit closer for you. And then the next unit is a 4 patch. So I need an A and a B and a C and a D. So here's A and here's B. Now be careful if your fabric is directional. Like I've got one that's kind of directional here, because see the lines are going up and down, that they're all going the same direction, unless you want it to be different. Okay, so here's A and B. And we'll do this one. So I'm just kind of chain piecing this. I've also got my pivot feature on. So for those of you who don't know what that looks like on your machine, here's the pivot feature button right here. A lot of you have this. And it's looks like a foot with a needle down through it. Okay. Okay. Somebody says they're having problems with freezing, Jan. No, I don't think so. Everything looks fine with, I mean, it looks fine on my tablet too. So, okay. So I've got A and B, and then I need a C and a D for my second 4 patch. So the second one is going to be a 4 patch. Okay. Let's sew that one together. Must be on your end. It's not freezing on my tablet, and I think I'm okay. All right, and then the last piece on this one, the first row, let's pull this back so you can see, it's going to be this little 2 patch down here, because it's like a half drop row. Okay. All right. So then I'm going to just do A and B. We'll do our last A and B together. All right, so we're going to piece those together. Now, I'm not an expert piecer, but I'll show you what I do so when I iron these, and I'm going to have to get up and press these behind me. Okay, so here's my 2 patch. This is my 4 patch, so I'll keep those together. And this is my 6 patch. So I'll keep these together. So I'm not an expert piecer, but what I do, and this is what works for me, is I have the even or the odd rows, I press the seams to the left, and the even rows, I press them to the right. So like when I'm doing these to sew them together into my patches, this one I'm going to iron my seam to the left, because this is row 1. Okay. And then like row 2, which has C and D in it, I'm going to iron to the right. And I put this in the instructions too. So this is just how I do it. And whatever works for you is fine, but you want these little seams to nest together in here. So whatever works for you. Okay. And then the last one, I'm going to press to the left, because it's an odd numbered row. So that's row 3 for my 6 patch. Okay. And I may get up and just press these a little bit better. Okay. So I just finger pressed them. And then when I go back to here's A and B again. So I'm going to do A to the left. I'm going to open it up, and I'm just going to press my seam to the left. Like that. And then I'm going to go, this is C and D, and I'm going to do this one to the right, because this is row 2. Okay. And it doesn't matter with the little 2 patch which way it goes, but I'm just going to do it to the left, because I keep everything the same. So I don't know if whatever works for you, if you piece, whatever works for you. Okay. Now I am going to get up. These are actually pretty good, so I might be okay with these. And then I can just press them at the end. Okay. If I get them finger pressed well enough. Okay, so this is my 4 patch, and this is my 6 patch. Okay, so I've got these pressed. So I've got this one to the left because it's row 3, row 2's to the right. All right. Yeah, nothing looks like it's freezing for me, and I'm on MediaCom, guys, so. Okay, so let's do the 6 patch first. Okay, I'm gonna just pull these down here. So the first 2 rows, I've got my seams pressed alternately. That's what I put in the instructions, and I'm going to put the right sides together, and then I'm going to nest those little center seams so my squares turn out pretty. Okay, and I'm going to get those, and I know that we discuss the pins every time I use them. Okay, these are those little teeny tiny magic pins. Do not try this with any other pin, but I do go over the pins, and you don't have to. You can just pull them out if you want. But these are those extra fine patchwork pins. They work great. So I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam after I nested my little, and I like to leave those pins in there because every single time I take them out, my seam scooches. And I'm just going to go over them slowly. And you can pull yours if you want, no problem. But remember, do not try this with any other pin. I've never found any other pins other than these little skinny ones that really work. Okay. All right, so there's my first 4 squares of my 6 patch, and then let's see, then my E and my F is like this. So I'm going to do this one on the bottom. Could be Facebook too, guys. So sometimes Facebook is kind of wonky. All right, so I'm going to pin these seams, and I got those little seams nested in there. Okay, and then we're going to sew this one on. Oh yeah, you like my plaid? Yeah, I like my plaid. Whoops, second here. I think I unthreaded my needle. Got to drop my needle. It's very important. Broke Grandma's cardinal rule. You got to drop that needle before you start sewing. Otherwise, it unthreads the machine. All right. There we go. Okay. Yeah, sorry guys, it's not freezing on my end. I'm seeing it and I'm moving. I'm moving on both my computers. I see myself about 10 seconds apart. Okay, so here's my first 6 patch. Like that. Okay. So there's the first 6 patch. Now the second one is a 4 patch. So we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to grab my A and B, C and D, and flip them right sides together. See, it could just be Facebook for some of you. Then I'm going to pin those little seam allowances. And then this is just a 4 patch. So I'm just going to sew these four together. Okay. Don't forget to drop your needle before you start. And make sure the thread is behind your foot, underneath and behind your foot. All right, so there's my 4 patch. Okay. All right, I'm going to put these pins down in here so I won't stab myself. And then now I'm going to have to get up and iron these. So this is what I did when I ironed. I also ironed all of my rows alternately. So I always iron the odd rows. So this is row 1. So I always iron the horizontal seams. These I'm going to iron up. Make sure I did that correctly. Because the even numbered ones I iron down, because that way I can nest the seams again when I go to do my rows. So these rows I have to iron up. Okay, so I'm going to go iron these up really quickly. So you pin on both sides of the seams? Yes, I do. Cindy, yes, I do, because that way I put 2 pins in there. I put one on each side, and now they have these new ones, these new pins, and the same company makes them. They're those magic pins, and they're called fork pins. I haven't tried them. They have 2 points on them, so that you only have to put 1 pin in, but it goes on either side of the seam. So I'm going to try some of those, and they have these really, really thin, extra fine pins that are called fork pins. So I thought I'd try some of those. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing with my 6 patch. I'm going to press my seams, my horizontal seams here upward, because I want them to be alternate also. Who loves the fork pins? Jan? Okay, so let me press for a second. Okay. And I got my new Oliso iron. I'm so excited. I don't have to cuss at the iron anymore. I'm so excited. I got it from Missouri Star, because Missouri Star had Oliso make them an iron. And so I got that iron. Okay, so I've got my 3 units for the first row. My 6 patch, my 4 patch, and my 2 patch. So the next thing I'm gonna do then is to put the blocks in. So I've got a block and then my 6 patch. So let me get my block. So I'm gonna put my little gingerbread guy in there, and I'm gonna sew him at the top of this 6 patch unit. So make sure you have your A fabric on the top, okay? So this is A, B, C, D, E, and F, okay? So I'm going to put my little dude here. And I like to pin that center seam down because it likes to flip over on me. So I usually put a pin in that center, where that center seam is, so that just to hold it flat. Let me tip these over here. There we go. All right, so then we're going to sew this to the bottom. Now, I made these blocks have an 1/8 inch, tack down line, so you don't have to take that colored thread out. So you can just sew, and and that'll all be hidden in the seam. Second here, I've got my blocks are in the way. Let me get my blocks out of the way here. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to stitch these together, make sure I got it even. I hope I do. I think it looks pretty good. I'm not very good cutter, and so I have more trouble with these blocks than I have any, is these square ones, these bigger squares. Because I'm never even, it seems like. Okay, there we go. So let's drop our needle. We're going to piece this one onto the top. Now remember, make sure you're getting your A, B, in the right direction, so you're going the right way. Okay. All right, so there's the first block, and then we have the 6 patch. And now the next one is going to be another of the red work blocks. So we'll just put a red work block in. Doesn't matter which one. Like I said, I had just a couple, and yes, a 1/4 inch seam. Carol, yes, it's a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm using my piecing stitch on the machine, and it's Q02 on most of the Brother Baby Lock machines. Okay. And I'm using my J foot instead of a piecing foot. You can use a piecing foot too. I don't like to use a piecing foot. All right, then I'm going to put my block on, my red work block on. I think we better pin this one too. Make sure we get it even in there. Is my E fabric from Walmart? No, I got it up at Helios. My E fabric is that plaid. Nope, I got it at Helios. But no, I got some really cute Christmas fabric up at Walmart after I got this, so I could have used that because it was really cute. It was a little more whimsical than this is. This is a little bit more traditional. All right, so we're going to stitch this one on. Nothing I hate more than taking basting out, so that's why I made those tack down lines that when you tack these down to your stabilizer, so you didn't have to take them out. Okay, so there's our second block put on. Okay, and then the next one is going to be the 4-patch. So here's the 4-patch here. So we're going to do the 4-patch. Make sure we get A up that way. We're going to put them right sides together. So you're going to do this with all 5 rows. So I'll bring my other one over here so you can see it here in a minute. See if I did okay with my row here. All right. So then we're going to piece this one onto the bottom of this block. I have a hard time getting everything matched up. There we go. Okay, piece this one on. But this pattern goes very fast. I had the whole top put together, the other 4 rows done in about an hour. And it does go together pretty quick, especially if you kind of get everything lined up and kind of do the whole thing. Oh, it doesn't have any Christmas fabric. I got the Christmas. Now they have some more now here in Anamosa, Jan, but I haven't been out there for a week. So, okay, so then we got our 4-patch, and now we need another block. Yep, another block. So I'm going to put the other block on. Make sure you get it right side up. That's always good. Okay, let's put the other block on. Make sure I get this one even. I'm not always very even, so there we go. Yeah, so I noticed they had some more Christmas fabrics when I was out there last week, but I haven't been out there for about a week now. Okay, and we're going to sew on this block. And I did in the videos that come with the set, with the design set, I did actually piece the entire top. So we're not going to piece the entire top tonight because I wanted to be able to maybe put a border on for you. So okay, so then there's our last block in this row, and then we have to put in our 2-patch at the bottom, and the A is on the left. So this is A. So we're going to put this on last. So the first and the last rows are kind of a half drop block because you just put a 2-patch on the top of the one and the bottom of the other one. All right, so we'll get this one lined up. And stitch this one on. There we go. Okay, so we got this whole row sewn together. Now we need to press it, and like we did with the units, this unit, the 6 and the 4-patch units, we press the seams upward because I want them to nest with the second row, which I pressed downward. So this first one, I'm going to press this towards the block. Okay, I'm going to go over to my iron and I'll kind of finger press these in so you can see. But I'm going to press towards the block on that one because I want the seam to be pressed up. These I already did. Here's another one. I'm going to press this up. Okay, and then I'm going to do this one. Again, I'm going to press towards the block this time. Maybe. These are a little harder to do this way, but that was the only way I could get my seams to nest nicely. But when I do the whole thing, when I do the big row, I'm going to open those seams up. Normally I don't open seams, but with the shape flex, I usually like to open the seams because it makes them kind of stiff to do them this way. But this, I had to do these shorter ones this way. All right, so we're going to press this up, okay? And then I'll go over and press this in with the iron. We're going to press this up towards the block. Sometimes if I just finger press them in a little bit, they help. It helps. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to go press this with the iron. Give me just a second here. Okay. So there's my row number 1, and I've got all of the seams, the horizontal seams pressed upward, because in row number 2, so we'll just kind of go through these rows. So row number 2 has a 6 patch, a 4 patch, and a 6 patch, and then 2 blocks. Then row number 3 has 2 6 patches and 3 blocks. Now I did put the May Your Days Be Merry right in the middle. You don't have to. I just wanted it in the middle since it was kind of the feature block. Then row 4 has a 6 patch, a 4 patch, and a 6 patch. And row 5 has that half drop block. So it's E and F on the top, and then a 4 patch and a 6 patch. Okay. So that you just go row by row, and then we're going to sew the rows together. All right, so let me go get my other rows, and then we will sew those together. Give me just a second here so I don't get all my papers mixed up. All right, so here's my other part of my quilt. So my other 4 rows, I'm going to go ahead. This is row number 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn these right sides together. Okay. Push this over a little bit. And then remember, I ironed all of my row 1 horizontal seams upwards so that they will nest nicely with my row number 2 ones that are down or pressed downward. So I'm going to go ahead and line these all up. Hopefully everything lines up. I usually do pretty well. I'm fairly accurate sewer. I have a little problems with triangles sometimes, but okay, so we're going to put the seams, and I like to pin on both sides of the seam because then it holds everything together. So here is another one that we have to get lined up. And you're just going to do all 5 rows like that. And sew them together. So this one actually goes together pretty quickly. Let's see if I can get this one lined up. And the trick is, of course, you know, we want our little squares to come together beautifully and have perfect corners. But, you know, how big will the quilt be at the end? It is, Cindy, it is about 38 or 39 by about 42. So it's not a real big quilt. It's a little longer than it is wide. Seems like it's about 38 by 42, something like that. So it's like just a little bit wider or longer than it is wide. All right, so we're going to get these lined up. There was another intersection there. Okay, got my 2 pins in there. Whoops. And then we got another one down here. We might have to put another couple pins in yet, but. And it makes it easy. It's not a real big quilt, so I knew then we could easily quilt it in the embroidery machine, even if you have a smaller machine, because there's some of you that have like a 6x10 machine, and this will easily go in there because it's not that big. Okay, so I'm going to put stab myself. I'm going to put some pins on these little center ones too, so that they don't flip over on me. Keep them nice and flat. We'll do this one. So yeah, so I actually made a separate border for piecing the top, the piecing the inner part, and then I did a separate video for the borders. So I will probably try to put at least part of a border on so you can kind of see the technique. But we won't get the whole thing put together tonight. So, all right. So now we're going to piece this row onto the quilt. And then that is the center part of the quilt. Get everything lined up here. Now, when I do these rows, I like to kind of tie off on the edge. I just use the tie off, like the polka dot button on the machine. Oops, I think I unthreaded myself again though. Because I like to, when I go to put the borders on, I don't want my blocks to come apart. Thread the machine again here. There we go. This particular thread was a little bit curly, and if you use your cutter much, it likes to unthread. Okay, so I'm going to take a stitch forward, and I'm just going to do a tack stitch to tack it instead of doing a backward stitch, because I don't like my rows to come apart. Okay, and again, I'm getting those pins. I've got these little skinny pins. It's okay, but just be careful when don't go over them 100 miles an hour. Got my 1/4 inch piecing stitch going. Just a second, let me get my papers out of the way so I don't knock them on the floor. Okay. Be careful when we go over the corners here, or over the pins. Okay. I thought it turned out really good. Thanks, Sandy. I like it. I've always wanted to make a redwork quilt, and I've seen a couple that I liked, but they were kind of complicated. The piecing was so complicated that I didn't think that everybody would enjoy having to do such complicated piecing. I wanted to make something a little easier. Because I really liked, I found a couple of other ones that I really liked that I thought about just making and having you buy the patterns, but the piecing was so much harder. So I wanted it to go fast. All right, we're getting just about there. Careful over the pins. And again, do not try that with regular, like those quilting pins. A lot of people use those quilting pins with the yellow balls on them. Do not do that with those. These are extra fine patchwork pins, is what they're called, magic pins. So they're up on the website, shieldsewingcenter.com, if you don't have those. Are those the heat resistant? Yes, they are. I love that too, because I'm always hitting them with an iron and then they would melt. The little heads would melt, but these are the heat resistant ones as well. Yes. Yep, the little grips, and the grips are long instead of little round ones. They're easier to get a hold of because they're long and narrow. You know, pins are kind of a thing for me. And I like really good pins, and I want them to be really sharp. And I was at the store and I had another type of pin at the store, and they were so dull. I could hardly get them into anything. It was like trying to put a log through a piece of fabric. They were so dull. These are so sharp. I have to be careful not to stab myself all the time. All right, so we'll take the pins out. And we'll see if we can get a couple borders on here so you can see how to do the borders. And next week we're going to quilt. It'll be so much fun. I've got my cabinet up here now, so everything is easier for the quilting. The quilting's hard with the little table, because my machine, you can see my machine lays flat against here, so it's a lot easier for the quilting. Okay, so now what I did when I did all my rows, I actually opened the seams up. So I'm going to go open the seam up for this last one, because that way I there's less bulk because of the shape flex. Shape flex is kind of a little bit bulky. So I usually, when I have like junctions together with the shape flex, I like to lay them open, and then it's less bumpy. Okay, so I did open up the last big seam. Okay, so I'm going to go do that real quick on my last seam here. Give me a second. This is a good time for questions if you have questions. Maybe if I can get it going here. I can see your questions, so if you have any, let me know while I'm doing the ironing. There's no other way to do this. I do have to iron it so I can measure for the next step. Sorry, guys. This one I can't really finger press. I have to iron it. This takes me a minute too because it's a small seam, to open. So is the internet better for some of you guys now? Because I haven't seen any stalling on my end. Okay, I'm just about done. Always takes me a minute to do this, so I had all the other ones done. It's a long seam. And you kind of have to do one block at a time. So I kind of do like one block section at a time, because then it goes a little faster. Kind of finger press it open. Okay, got a couple blocks to do yet. There we go. Okay. All right, so there's my finished inner top. Okay, so there's my finished inner top. Oh, that's good, Jan. That's better now. Yeah, I've had Mediacom. I must have good quality Mediacom, because I've never had any trouble at home either. And I'm on Mediacom up here at Dad's too. All right, so here's my center block. Here's my 5 rows all put together. I've got little strings. I'm going to have to do some trimming. Okay, so let's go ahead and do at least the inner border so you can kind of see the technique. And I have pretty detailed videos that I gave you with the instructions about how to do the borders. But I wanted, let's go do at least a couple of borders so you know what to do. Okay. So what time is it? We're doing good. It's only 7 o'clock. So let's try to do at least a couple of the borders. All right. So the piecing of the interior of the quilt, again, you can access the video by clicking on the link here in the instructions. And then you can copy and paste the whole playlist from the first page. And we went over that last week. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go on to page 5 of the instructions, adding the borders. So I have adding the borders to the quilt. There's the inner border instructions and the outer borders. So I did the inner and the outer borders in the same video. Okay. So we're going to measure the quilt lengthwise through the center. And then I'm going to trim 2 of my 1.5 by width of fabric strips to this vertical measurement. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my quilt through the center. So through here. Okay. So I have my tape measure. And I'm going to measure my quilt Okay, it says it's 30, just 36 there. So I like to measure a couple of places. I usually go a little bit further out towards the outside, kind of make sure that I'm about the same. And I'm usually pretty good. So and this may not be your measurement, okay? Just know that so 36 looks like it must be the measurement. So I'm pretty flat here. So I think I'm good at 36. Okay. Measure the center one more time. I like to measure like right down through the center. It's actually about 36 and an eighth. I'm going to lay this a little flatter over here and make sure I've got it measurement right. Try that again. 36th. Yeah, it's almost an eighth. So I might do them 36 and an eighth. Yep, 36 and an eighth. Okay. Your measurement may be different, so don't take the measurements, as gospel. That might not be your measurement. So you need to measure your quilt. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm also looking at my quilt to make sure I didn't get my units mixed up, so that none of my blocks are like touching each other. Every now and then I'll turn one upside down or something. So, all right, so 36 and an eighth. So I'm going to grab my inner borders, which are my 1.5 inch strips here. Okay, I'm going to grab 2 of them, and I'm going to cut those off so that they are 36 and an eighth. So half of 36 is 18, right? And then an eighth, so I need just a hair over 36 inches. So I'm going to leave them folded, and I'm going to cut them together so that they're the same length, okay? So I'm going to do that back here at my table. So half of 36 is 18. Hopefully, I did the math right. Not always good at math. All right, so here's 18. And then I need just about a 1/16 of an inch over. I think that'll be good. So then it'll be 36 and an eighth. Okay. So here's my 2 borders that I cut. Cut them at 18 and about a 1/16. So they should be 36 and an eighth long. Okay. So then what we're going to do, these are going to go on the sides. So these are the side ones. Oops, second here. Get the instructions so I can keep going. So 1 strip on each vertical side of the quilt using a 1/4 inch seam. Press the seams toward the border. All right, so we're going to find the center of this. I always like to find the center of my border. So I'm going to fold it in half. Then I know that I've got it equal distant. Sometimes I just start at the top, but I usually fold it and find the center. So here's my center of this side. And we will put a pin there. Okay, so we're going to take our center of our border and put it right there. So here's the center of my border. I'm going to pin this on. And I like to pin where the little junctions are, where the little seams are, so that, everything's flat. I like to keep everything staying flat for me. So here's this border. Hopefully I measured right and they come out to the end. Well, that's the goal, right? Now, the reason you measure down through the center is that you want your borders to be the same. Okay, I used to just kind of stick them on, and I'm lucky because my quilts are usually relatively square. But if you have a little trouble with piecing and your quilt is not square, then you can really come out with some wavy borders. So that's why you measure this way, so that they're the same size. Okay, so I'm going to get this one lined up. pin that down. Okay, so let's go down to the other end here. See how we did here. With any luck at all, they end up being the same length. This is always my favorite. I love putting the borders on. I've always liked doing the borders. But I did do a pretty detailed video on the borders. So, okay, so then I'm going to go down here, make sure my ends meet up. Get my little, I always have a hot flash after I iron. Now I'm too hot. Been over there over the steam. Okay. There we go. So there's that. So we're going to sew this one on. 1/4 inch seam again. I got my piecing stitch going here, Q02. My J-foot. You can use your piecing foot if you prefer that. I've always just, I love my J-foot because it's longer and it doesn't, it goes over the bumps better. Okay, so just a second here. I'm going to put this a little bit closer. All right, so 1/4 inch seam for my border. This out of the way. I'm going to very slowly over that pin. And go a little faster when I'm not on pins. Okay. This machine sews pretty fast. I love this machine because when I teach though, when I'm doing videos, I don't sew as fast because sometimes it jiggles the camera. So I usually sew pretty fast. Oh, how long can you access the videos if you buy it? I will leave them up there I will leave them up on YouTube, Cindy, so you can access them. You'll be able to access them through the instructions themselves, or I've also sent you the address that you can just copy and paste into your browser. I'll just leave them up there. And if there's ever a problem, I have a list of everybody that's bought that design, and that, you know, like if I have to give you different address, I will. So you will have access to them indefinitely. Okay. That's why I wrote both instructions and videos, because a lot of people want videos and some people never watch them. But I like written instructions, but I wanted both for this because a lot of people wanted videos. Okay, so here, and I'm also going to tie off my borders. I like to tie off my borders because, you know, that they were kind of valid at the end of the quilt. I like to tie off my border. Okay, so we're going to get these pins all out, and then we'll do the other border. This goes together pretty quickly. Hopefully I didn't lose my border. I think it's not on the floor. Okay, so we'll turn this one over and we're going to do the other side. Again, I'm going to fold it in half, make sure I know where the center is. Okay, whoops, make sure I get it centered here. I'm going to fold this in the center. Mark my center. Sorry, I keep bonking the camera. All right. So I at least wanted to get a couple borders on before we quit for the night. All right. I think the other videos are very self-explanatory about the borders, so, but I wanted you to at least get to see at least some of the borders on it. And then I will finish it and have it ready to go for quilting next week. We're going to quilt next week. The quilting is really fun. Easy to do. All right, so I'm going to pin where those intersections are so that everything stays nice and flat for me. With the shape flex on the blocks, you almost have to put the shape flex on so that nothing wrinkles, but it does make them a little bit stiffer. So I like to pin there to keep those seams laying flat for me. All right. Hopefully we'll and oh yay, it turned out the same length. Look at there. That's always a plus. Okay, does everybody want me to do the other two borders for the inner border? I can do those too. We'll sew this one on, and then if you want me to do the other two, I will do the other two. Or I can just talk you through the other ones. You tell me what you'd like. I think some of you have done this before, but not everybody has. I do have a lot of, and like I said, I did do a very detailed video for the borders in the design pack. Okay, so we're getting close here. I want to get my top finished. So this is a good way for me to do that with all my friends. So I don't have to sit here and our borders corners mitered. No, they are not. They're just standard borders. I did not miter the borders. I don't like mitered borders too well. I'm not very good at them. So no, I did not miter the borders. These are straight. Okay. There's a corner block in the borders. Okay, so we're going to do this one. Let's get this one out. Okay. Again, I'm going to tie these off. I like to tie it off. Okay. Yeah, I don't like to sew too fast when I'm teaching though, because the camera bounces. I actually put the pedal to the metal, not over the pins, but I sew pretty fast. I like to sew really fast. This machine sews so fast. It was funny when I went to this, I really noticed a difference when I got my Dream Machine, how much faster I could sew. It was amazing. So I'm anxious to see people, if people are making the quilt, I'm anxious to see your pictures. So make sure you post them on the group, okay? So I'd sure like to see them. Now it depends on how you wanted to do this. Like I've got repeated fabrics in here, but some people that have already made the quilt had all different fabrics. Like all the borders were different than the blocks. So you can kind of do this any way you want. All right. I don't want to push my instructions off on the floor. I took my embroidery unit off. It's easier to sew with the embroidery unit off. Everything lined up again. Cindy says it's up to me if we do another border. You want to do the top and bottom border so you know how to do it, or you think you got it? So what I did is I'm going to iron these out, the borders out towards the border. So the seams will be ironed this way, outward. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tie these off at the end because I like to tie off my borders. Okay. And we'll take these off and we'll press them because then we're ready for the other two borders. Okay, so I'll press them, then we'll talk through the rest of the borders. How about that? So I can talk you through all the outer borders too. And then I will finish this up and then I will post a picture of it. Okay, so let me press them. I'm going to be pressing this direction. Okay, press the seam towards the border. Just about done. Takes a second to do this. They're long. There we go. Okay. All right. So the next border then, of course, would be the top and bottom, these inner borders. So we got the little outer border. We got the inner border here. Okay. Then what you would do, let's look at the instructions so you know where we're at. Measure the quilt widthwise through the center. So I'm going to bring it up here again, and then I would measure it through here. Okay, let me find my tape measure. So then I have to measure through here. And you're going to include the borders, of course. And this is 32 1/4. Okay, I like to measure a couple of different places just to see if I'm pretty close. 32 1/4. All right. So then I'm going to cut my top and bottom. And like I said, measure your own quilt. That may not be the measurement for yours. 32. It's just a little bit shy of 1/4, not quite 1/4. I need to go back and press a little bit again. I have a hard time pressing when I'm in a hurry. So I might go back and press before I put these on. But it looks like it's 32, about 32 1/4. Okay. So then I'm going to cut my other two borders, 32 1/4. So here's my other two borders. Okay. And I cut these 32 1/4 and then sew them on the top and the bottom. All right. So that is the inner border. The outer border is slightly different because there's a block on the end. You know, there's a block on the corners. And so to do the inner or the outer borders, the first borders are going to be these longer ones on the sides. So you're going to measure the quilt lengthwise again through the center, including the inner borders. So we're going to measure it again this way. After I get my top and bottom border on, I'm going to measure it again down the center and cut my two borders that length, and then they're going to go on the outside. So you're always doing the longest seam first. Okay. And so that's going to be that. But then I'm also going to measure the quilt widthwise through the center, including the inner borders again, because I need that one to be the same length basically as the other inner border, because we're going to put a block on the end. And then what you're going to do with that border is you're going to sew one of your blocks, whatever block you decide to have as your corner block. So I made mine green, and on each end of the top and bottom border to make it longer. Okay, does that make sense? So I tried to put it in order in the instructions. So measure the quilt. This is for the outer borders. Measure the quilt lengthwise through the center, including the inner borders. Okay. Trim 2 of the 3.5 by width of fabric strips to this vertical measurement. Set these borders aside. Then you're going to measure the quilt widthwise through the center, including the inner borders. Trim 2 3.5 by width of fabric strips to the width of the quilt. These are the top and bottom borders. Sew a 3.5-inch corner block on each end of the top and bottom borders using a 1/4-inch seam. Press the seams towards the center of the border. So you're gonna press your seams in. Okay. Then you sew the vertical side borders on, and then you sew the top and bottom borders on. Okay, so I did put quite a detailed video about that with the pack. So I wasn't planning on doing all the borders tonight because it's a little hard for me to do that at the machine. It's easier for me to get up. I have to get up and down a lot when I'm doing borders to make sure everything's measuring correctly. So it's easier for me, but I wanted to at least get a couple on and then go through the measurements. So for this other inner border, I'm going to measure across here, including my borders. Okay, I'm going to measure across the center, and then I'm going to cut my 2 1.5-inch borders, and I'm going to put that on the top and the bottom of the quilt. And then I'm going to measure again the length of the quilt through the center, including the borders, and I'm going to cut my 3.5-inch side panels, my side borders. Then I'm going to measure across the center of the quilt, including the borders, and cut my top and bottom borders, and then sew the corner blocks onto those. Okay, so that's how you do the borders. So I will finish my borders up tonight, and I will post my... I didn't cut my borders to length until after I had sewn them on. That is fine. However, they may not be the same length, Jan. That's why you measure the quilt and cut both of your borders so that they are the same length. That's how you can get the wavy borders. Because if one side is a little different size than the other, if both your borders are the same size, then it will keep the quilt more square. So that's why this is the way. I used to do it that way too, but I found that my borders were a little ripply sometimes. So I started doing the measuring instead. And I found that my quilts are much more square now. Okay. So whatever works for you, but that's the way I've been doing it, and I find my quilts are more square. Okay. So are there any other questions? Is that enough of the piecing of the quilt that everybody understands what to do? So like when I did my rows, I did it just like I did this one. I like to do like all of my units, my 6 and 4 patch and 2 patch units first, and then I sew my row together, and then I press, and then I sew all the rows. So I did all 5 rows, and then I sew the whole thing together. And then I start my borders. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So in a second here, let me switch my camera back so we can say goodnight. And I think everybody, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. So just email me through, message me through Facebook, email me, call me at the store. Just trying to find my other camera. Here we go. All right. Okay. So are there any other questions? Like I said, I'm not an expert piecer, but I wanted to make it a simple pattern so you can learn good habits. And I tried to be very careful about how I wrote the instructions so that I would give you good habits to learn, because I've kind of learned a piece by happen chance, and I learned bad habits, so I've had to go back and learn better habits as I've been doing these. So I am getting better. I think my quilts are getting better. So I've noticed that some of the ones I did early on, like I've got a lot of clipped corners and stuff. So I am learning, and that's good. It's good to learn, right? So, okay. So next week we'll do the quilting. So I'm going to finish putting my borders on, and then I'm going to sandwich my backing, my batting, and my quilt on top. I'm going to pin baste it, and I'm going to get ready. Oh, did I get a picture of Judy's quilt? I have not, Pat. I will do that for next week, and I'll put it up on the group. And I'd also like a picture of Lynn's quilt. Lynn put a picture up, but I'm not sure if she put it on the group or if she put it on the Sassy Sewing Sisters one. I enjoy watching oh, okay. Cool. I wasn't sure who said that. Oh, it's Cindy. Yes, this is a very simple pattern, Cindy. That's why I wanted to make it this way, because I've got a lot of people that are embroiderers that are sort of quilters like me that enjoy simple projects. Otherwise, it makes it hard, doesn't it? So I've kind of learned to quilt through my embroidery. So that's why I tried to make it a simple quilt, because this is pretty traditional. So, okay. So I will put a picture of this once I get my borders on. I'll maybe finish the borders later tonight. And then next week we'll do the quilting. And the last week right after Thanksgiving, the last week in November, we're going to do a project in Design Center. Okay, everybody have a good week, and I'll see you next week, and we'll do some quilting. Thanks, everybody. Good night.